I'm wondering if you can speak as well about some of your research that, I find particularly interesting and particularly, within the community level around supporting people who experience homelessness and have pets. That's something that often we'll hear the sort of stigma or the sort of bias that people shouldn't have pets if they can't have if they don't have housing or they are unable to care for pets and yet the research often shows that pets are beneficial. So I wonder if you could speak a bit about supporting people who do have pets.
Yeah. Um, People experiencing homelessness who have pets run into barriers so many times during homelessness and then in their efforts to exit homelessness and find housing. There are lots of services that are not pet friendly, and that means that people will often forego those much needed services and supports to stay with their pet. And to me, that makes so much sense. When people have limited, close, trusting relationships, and a pet is providing that unconditional source of support, love, and connection, it makes so much sense that people will want to retain and be there with their pet as much as they can. And so really what we need to do is we need to start to shift toward how can we accommodate people with pets in services and supports. Recognizing that not everybody that goes to a shelter or a drop-in program likes or is comfortable with pets, but there are ways to accommodate both people's needs. And so it starts with looking at organizational policies and procedures and seeing what are the opportunities here where we can maybe make some changes to ensure that this group isn't left out. And that is exactly what's happening. People who have pets and experience homelessness are often fall through the cracks. And once we're able to address that in the homeless system, then we have people that can be advocates for those individuals with landlords. And what can happen is here in Ontario, there can be this kind of gray area with regards to no pet policies in rental housing. And unfortunately, simply seeing that is enough to turn people away. And of course they're turned away. They don't want to go into somewhere that there's going to be problems. They might not have, the skills or the comfort in navigating those issues if it were to come up with a landlord, and that might lead them to experience homelessness again. But when there's somebody that's knowledgeable about, housing legislation and laws in Ontario and in other communities, they can help pet owners find and advocate for their needs and be there for these individuals as they look for housing. And so really recognizing in many ways that there's changes that are needed within the homeless sector so that the homeless sector can then strengthen their ability to advocate for this group in exiting homelessness. I think the other thing that's really important to recognize when it comes to pet ownership and homelessness, there are some beliefs that pets of people who experience homelessness are not as well taken care of. They're unhealthy, and if people themselves, quote unquote, can't take care of themselves, how could they take care of their pet? And this is a myth that seems to persist in popular public discourse. Yet the research is very clear. The animals of people experiencing homelessness are no worse in terms of their health than those of people who have housing. In fact, there are some areas where those pets are actually better adjusted, typically around social elements, so interacting with strangers, and that makes sense because they're much more exposed to strangers. But overall, there really are very few differences. And at the end of the day, people that have pets who are experiencing homelessness will often tell you, my pet eats first. I take care of my pet above all else. My pet is the most important animal, person, source of support to me, and I'm going to ensure and do everything I can to maintain that. And that really speaks to the strength of the animal-human bond that exists regardless of housing status.
Yeah, you're right. People often ask me in conversations, what can we do to help? And I often say, if you do have a shelter near you or a drop-in center and they do allow pets, donate a bag of pet food, because oftentimes you're right, people will give their food to their pet. Absolutely. And the pet eats first. So if you can give them appropriate food, then you're ensuring that the person will eat their food as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah, very, very important issue. And I think people who are pet people really understand that bond.